Show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. Merry Christmas. I can't believe it's another Christmas time here on the Age of Fission radio show. It's really, time is flying by, and we actually made it through this year, although we have been dramatically harmed by the Republicans. Today I'm going to have on with us Tom Ackermann, had planned on joining us. He got snowed in, so he was a little late. He just called me. He's going to be calling in the radio show in about 10 or 15 minutes. If he doesn't call me back by 8:15, I'm going to give him a call. So that means I'm a bit solo here right now, and I want to thank you for joining us. If you're listening live on Christmas morning, we appreciate that. I know there's lots of people who hate Christmas. My youngest daughter is one of them. She called me yesterday and said, "Mom, I think next year I'm going to travel to someplace where they don't celebrate Christmas." So I appreciate that for people who just get sick of the mad dog rush and the pressure to buy and the pressure to just act nice. This one time a year, people sort of feel this pressure to just be nice, and you got to get along with people that you can't stand, and just once a year instead of making it an everyday thing, right? So I completely get that. And in fact, Christmas has been quite commercialized, as we all know and hate, so, and there are people like me who celebrate Christmas who I don't really buy the whole story, the baby Jesus thing, crucifixion, the whole, a friend of mine, Yvonne, posted on Facebook a little thing. It was I found it hilarious. He says, spoiler alert, can't say that, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. He gets crucified. I thought that was hilarious and then my sister chimed in and said, "Thank God he chose to. Amen." And I have to say that brought it home to me about that there are millions of people who really believe 100% that the Bible is 100%, 100%. There's people that believe that the Torah is 100% correct. There's people that believe that the Quran is 100% correct and that they have a right to harm others in the name of whatever book they want to hang on to. And I don't know. That's my big objection to all of it. Although I love the holidays, I really enjoy having family and baking and all that stuff. And this was the first year, actually, my daughter let me bring the grandkids some vegan candy and vegan Christmas cookies. I guess the fourth child sort of pushed her over the edge of being able to do everything. So, by the way, I'm going to give you this little recipe. It's super simple for those of you that are going vegan. If you want to make an icing for cookies, it's the royal icing. You take a can of garbanzo beans drain the beans out, use the juice, use the water in the beans, and you boil it down to 8 tablespoons. Add vanilla and a pound of sugar and beat it. It's brown. And you take your beater and you beat it until it turns white, and it looks just like regular icing. Was the oddest thing. I'd never seen it. I had to dig up all these like little vegan recipes that I don't cook vegan, to be honest. I don't bake cookies and all that stuff. So I usually just go to the holiday recipe places and, use butter and, the junk stuff that I never eat and give away at Christmas. So anyways, let's see. We're 5 minutes in. I think Tom will be calling us soon. Boy, has it been an eventful year, hasn't it? I don't know about you, but I am so glad this year is over. Like, this has been traumatic. Like, there was an article in the paper about how the emoluments clause, the judge threw out the lawsuit by the, I think it was called Think Progress, that was suing the president for breaking the emoluments clause. And for those of you that don't know, the emoluments clause is in our Constitution that says the president is not allowed to take money from foreign governments because it leaves him in a compromising position, to be honest. He can be blackmailed and manipulated to do things that aren't in the best interest of the country but are in the best interest of himself. And that's what we're seeing, frankly. We just saw the tax scam. The president just, made $15 million. And telling us our little $300 a month that we're going to save is going to be equitable. So, but that's a domestic issue, right? But we're talking about Mar-a-Lago specifically in my book, where he has the just to join is like $200,000. The average person that I read, that average person that goes there spends about $300,000 a year. And these are foreign people who can come and have the ear of the president, be on the grounds of the president, work in his restaurant. And on top of that, the United States government has to pay. We're paying, since he's been president, we've paid millions, over $10 million. So for him to just go golfing and be down in Florida because he doesn't like D.C., because he thinks the White House is a dump. So the emoluments clause, let's get back to that so people understand this. The court did not throw the case out on merit. It threw the case out because it said it's Congress's job to uphold the Constitution. You can't start with the courts. The Congress has to uphold the emoluments clause. The Congress has to hold the president accountable. That's their job, not the courts. That's called separation of powers in our country. So what we have now is a Congress who's refusing to uphold their duty to keep the shred of democracy that we have going on. And I've heard people say, oh, well, we're not a democracy. Yes, we are. We are. We're a representative form of government. That's a democracy. Now, we might be a republic, but we're definitely a democracy, and it is outrageous that people are just swallowing the Kool-Aid, It's kind of like, I hate to offend Christians, but that's kind of how I feel about, like, the whole, we are backing, this nation is backing Israel, who are arresting 6-year-old children now in Gaza, who have turned the Palestinian state in what little shreds, which little bits that those people are hanging on to. They basically have just bulldozed it down. If a kid gets arrested, if they find somebody really perpetrated some kind of crime against Israel, and let's be clear, for every one child killed in Israel, there are over 200 killed in Palestine. So the comparison is off the charts. I actually have a niece whose husband became a rabbi, and she's not allowed to talk to me because of this Palestinian issue, because I refuse to, swallow the Kool-Aid. And I think this gets down to doing the right thing. We have the School of Americas in the United States still, folks, which basically they, teach other foreign governments how to torture and actually now how to spy. It's kind of interesting. It's and they actually had to rename it because this Catholic group, I think it was, what was it? I forget the name of the Catholic group that was protesting, but they were protesting so much. Oh, there's Mr. Tom. that they had to rename it. So hang on just one second. Good morning, Tom. Can you hear us? Hello? We'll give it a second. Maybe he'll chime in. Oh. Hello?
Lonnie, top of the morning to you.
It's top of the morning. Merry Christmas, Thomas Ackermann.
Oh, gee.
Yeah.
Merry.
Merry.
All the best to you as well. I'm not sure how to respond to that exactly, because it's one of my, lately, one of my least favorite mythological events. But
I know, that's what I was saying earlier. You know, my friend Yvonne, he put a thing on he posted a thing on Facebook that said, spoiler alert, he gets crucified.
Well, first of all,
I thought that was funny, but then there's my sister who posted, I'm glad he chose to, amen. And I didn't mean to, I removed the quote. I was going to say, I can't believe you still believe that story, but there are millions of people who really believe it's real. Just like they believe the Torah is real, like they believe the Quran is real, like for real, they 100% believe it is the word of God.
First of all, thanks for inviting me on this day, Lonnie.
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
You're such a friend and a soul that is on the same wavelength. I find myself encouraged by people like yourself, and
me too. And I
don't mind this ring. Don't mind this ring. I'll just let it ring through. It'll leave a message.
Okay.
So I wanted to add something. Can I add something to this? Your introduction on December the 25th of. Can I read you a little thing?
Please do. You know I love reading.
Okay. Here's a researcher in the line of Jordan Maxwell. I'm not sure if you've heard of Jordan Maxwell.
Oh, I do know Jordan Maxwell.
Yeah, and he deciphers the hidden meanings, or the meanings behind words, what it is that we're actually saying when we say a particular word. It's kind of like the idea we have lost is that a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Shakespeare really nailed that one.
That's funny. I'm looking through Shakespeare right now. I was going to read a poem by Shakespeare. Go ahead. Okay.
Anyway, there's a researcher, and this is very common knowledge. I'm going to read this to you. It's about Christmas Day, the one again reborn Son, O-N or U-N of God. Here it goes. There is a very interesting phenomenon that occurs around December the 25th on the winter solstice. From the summer solstice to the winter solstice, the days become shorter and colder. And then from the perspective of the northern hemisphere, the sun appears to move south and get smaller and more scarce. The shortening of the days and the expiration of the crops when approaching the winter solstice symbolizes the process of death to the ancients. It was the death of the sun, S-U-N, on September 21st on September 21st every year, the autumn equinox, where there is 12 hours of daylight and night, the sun goes below the equator and sets on the Southern Cross constellation of stars. For 3 months, it hangs on the Southern Cross. On every December the 22nd, it stops descending and dies for 3 days on the cross. Then at midnight on December 24th, the S-O-N or S-U-N is reborn and once again rises off its cross. So,
wow, that's awesome. Now, there you go. That's where it really came from.
This is basically what I appreciate Jordan Maxwell is that he understands the origin of words and tries to understand the mystery through the mythologies that have been created. And it's something that, we live every day in a very, technocratic sort of environment. And we lose touch with what the ancients understood about their reality.
You know what? I think that leads to the confusion. I think that's the confusion that a lot of people have, because I think on a very deep-rooted level, we can't really, we are part of the universe. We're part of that universal cycle. Our bodies see it whether we like it or not. And that leads to the confusion. For me, this is why I think we're able to have these holidays, because it doesn't really matter what garb you want to put on it, Christian, Muslim, Islam, or Judaism. It's all the same. It's these cyclical things that we have, that we're part of, and we create these rituals to celebrate the beginning of the new year. Like, I think, for me, that's what the holiday is about, really, just about being together, reminding ourselves of our humanity. And I mean, I as I said earlier in the show when you weren't on the air, this is the one time a year when people feel, and my daughter hates Christmas. She called me up last night and said, Mom, I'm going on vacation next year. Like, I am not doing this again.
Somewhere like, warm, likely. Yeah, somewhere
that's
warm.
What she said. I just can't take, and for her, part of it is this whole fake thing where, I mean, I think it gets spurred by her dad, because her dad at Christmas time always feels like he needs to be a dad and starts calling her again. It's like so annoying to her. But I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about. There are people who don't really, love is an active verb. We can act in love with each other throughout the year. It doesn't just have to happen at Christmas. We can give presents throughout the year. We can give food to the homeless throughout the year. We can make these extra efforts that people do at Christmas time every single day. And yet at Christmas, they sort of store it up. It's almost like, well, it's Christmas, so I'm going to be nice now. It's Christmas, I'm going to tolerate my cousins or something. You know what I mean?
I have a certain take on that in relation to, as a painter, my daily focus is on making paintings. And what I understand about my extended history, the family that has inspired me are people that have contributed to our well-being through the way we observe our world around us. It's like to have that kind of wonder, that feeling of, I don't know, what is that truly the wonder that we're a part of. These are the great artists in the past that have evoked this feeling in me. And interestingly, it is outside of culture. Culture culture is something that attempts to create a winning team feeling. This is why they're always inspiring people to kill each other, because they're not on the winning team. So as soon as we immerse ourselves in the understanding of our past in an inspirational sense, so that this little thing I read you about the equinox and the symbolism of the sun dying on the cross, S-U-N, converted to sun, and this happens over and over in many cultures. You have many...
I mean, it was formed since as far as I know, it's gone back over 12,000 years, like back to the ancient Egyptians. The Christian religion mimics all the rituals. I don't know if you've ever read Carolyn Meese's book called Sacred Contracts, but her book is really awesome because she ties it in a knot, all that little. She studied all these ancient religions, and interestingly enough, they all have the same basic rituals, the same type of year.
They overlap, yes. And one tries to become the dominant one always.
Right.
There is that feeling of, if you don't belong to our team, you're on the losing side. And if you don't want to comply, we're going to kick the shit out of you. And unfortunately, this is something people divorce themselves from. It's right in front of our noses, this hostility, this nastiness contained within what we consider to be Christian. How many drones will it take to become a good Christian? I mean, this is out of our
all we have to do is look at American politics right now. Those Christians in Congress have ignored the Emoluments Clause, passed a tax bill that gave the president $15 million, kicked children off of health care, are cutting veterans benefits. I mean, these are Christians? Like, for real? This is in fact when I was attempting to be a Christian. That's when I said, I'm done. When George Bush got elected, when he stole the election, I thought, if this is Christian, I don't want any part of that.
Maria gave me this little thing this morning. I told her I was going to be talking with you, and she knows how you feel about Trader Trump. So she dug up an article from, let's see, what newspaper? The Globe, which is a major newspaper in Canada. This is from November 18, 2017, but it reposted an article from 1990, July 2nd, 1990. It's about Trump. Would you like to hear it?
I'd love to.
It's 1990. This is a Toronto national paper, and it was, I don't know who it's from, Ogoquay, New York. I don't know where that is. Anyway, I've been closing Marie Brenner's terrific piece on Donald and Ivana Trump. We wanted to capture their fascinating repositioning now that they are divorcing, and Ivana has been upgraded to superstar victim of the brutish philandering husband, which she is playing to the hilt. Marie has been able to establish such a pattern of lying and loud-mouthing in Trump that it's incredible he still prospers and gets banks to loan him money. Great quote where his brother says, Donald was the kid who threw the cake at the birthday party. He's like some monstrous id creation of his father, a cartoon assemblage of all his worst characteristics, mixed with particular excess of the new media age. Fake, huh? Remember, fake? The revelation that he has as a collection, this is amazing. This floored me. The revelation that he has a collection of Hitler's speeches at the office is going to make a lot of news. Get that one, huh? Is that incredible? He has a compilation of Hitler's speeches at his office in 1990.
I have to say, I have said this many times, and people think I'm laughing, but I actually think he's a plant. I think they have planned him to be president. I mean, the same people that funded Hitler is the Bush crime family. Let's just get right down to it. It's the same people.
Yeah, you mean like Prescott Bush way back when?
Yes, the Bush crime family actually funded Hitler. In fact, the United States government froze their assets during World War II for selling arms to Hitler when the war was going.
Did Prescott get prosecuted?
No, and actually, you know what happened? They sued the United States government after the war, and we paid them $1 million for loss of profits.
Wow.
Yes, and so, but, Donald Trump in that time, 1990, that was very shortly after the late 80s, that economic collapse, right? He bought his first, when they said, banks will lend him money. Yes, he got money, but you know what he bought? This was really amazing. One of his major first things was a building that was a front for the CIA. It was a paint company. It had been a paint company. They called it a paint company. It was a CIA front. Somehow he got miraculous funding to buy that when nobody else could get business loans. And here's a man that has Hitler's speeches in his office. I'm not shocked by that. And in fact, if you look at what he's doing very much the whole demeaning. This is what they do. They demean the media first. They come right out and make people not believe their own institutions that are running their own government, which is what he's doing. He relentlessly attacks our own institutions, and he relentlessly attacks the media. In fact, he's such a batterer. He's got people like twitching. You can't help. You got to wake up and see what he's saying on Twitter now. You know what I mean? We're like wondering. Honestly, it triggers this whole, for myself, a person who is, exposed to a lot of battery at a child. I mean, it's that same anxiety that's happening with Americans as they wonder what he's going to do when he gets home. That's what I thought when I was a kid. What's going to happen today? It's that same anxiety because he is truly has narcissistic personality disorder and is a true batterer. But more than that, I think he's a genuine traitor. I think this guy is that's why I call him Traitor Trump. I have no respect for him whatsoever and Congress, the reason that he's getting away with what he's doing is specifically because of the Congress. In fact, this emoluments clause, about the emoluments clause, I just mentioned it. The emoluments clause says a president cannot take money from a foreign interest to keep him from being, maybe blackmailed or coerced into doing things. Trump is making lots of money off of foreign governments. So Congress is supposed to hold him accountable, and they should be demanding a review of this. Well, they're not. So a citizen action group sued him, and recently the courts threw the case out. The headlines were, court denies emoluments clause. No, they didn't. The court actually said, this is not our job to do it. It is the job of Congress to do it. So they didn't exactly say the case was without merit, but they said in a country where there's supposedly the rule of law, we have to follow procedure, and the procedure is that the Congress is the person that's supposed to do this. So it's really interesting. It's very interesting.
Well, his own brother referred to him as a monstrous id creation by his father, capturing all the worst aspects.
He probably is.
That's his brother. His own brother says he's a monstrous id creation by the father.
I wonder if that's the brother who died of alcoholism. If they, I wonder if his brother did die of alcoholism based on that.
How many brothers does he have?
I have no idea, to be honest.
Okay. And I don't think we should depress people too much in this conversation.
Me either. It is Christmas.
Like, let's lift it up past this sort of surrogate interest. I mean, it's serious. Lonnie, don't get me wrong. I think this is a very serious event that happened, electing this person. But in the scheme of things, you've gone through some really rotten presidents. I don't know.
And then on top of that, let's be clear. Considering the fact that Fukushima is still ongoing, what the harm that there's other things that are going to happen. I mean, hiring him did not help the situation. In fact, it's made it grotesquely worse, but it's already pretty bad. And in the meantime, we get to live. I had on Guy McPherson last week, who basically was like, well, we've got 30 years to live, folks.
I have a take on that. I listened to the interview, and I have a take on Guy McPherson. I find him actually, I commented, I think I left a comment on your show, on your radio show. I'm not sure.
Oh, on YouTube, yeah.
I'm pretty sure I commented. And I was somewhat critical, a little bit, but at the same time, a kind of tongue-in-cheek feeling I have about this fellow. Yes, he says in 10 years there's not going to be much left. I think nothing seems to have worked to rattle the collective. It's kind of a feeling of throwing up your hands. What can I say, short of something like this, where people begin to pay attention on some level? And I think there are many fights that are out there. Obviously, you and I are convinced that Fukushima is the jewel in the crown, being man-made. Now, Guy McPherson also is referring to natural events that will occur once the water level or the water temperature rises. There are potentially enormous releases of methane and things that we really have no control over. I think there are man-made events, and then there are natural events that it could be, Lonnie, it could be that we face a major extinction through natural occurring events. I think this has probably happened in the past. But our concern isn't what nature provides us, our concern are the negatives, but something like Fukushima, which is man-made. It's entirely man-made, and it has huge impact on every life form, actually inanimate as well. That if the fission process, it basically cannibalizes everything around it. So whether you're alive or animate or inanimate, it's still affecting everything, right? It's not just one thing. So between when we talk about this and being in the age of fission obviously identifies this as a very important aspect to our existence right now. And Guy McPherson, I think, is kind of like super frustrated with all the evidence is there, all the truth has been expressed. Why is there such a feeling of complacency about the situation we're in? And that's sort of my take. I may be wrong. Maybe you have a different sense of him. But I kind of feel like he's very optimistic in a way, but feels like he needs to rattle the troops in some manner. And is it going to work? I don't know. Has he had an effect?
It's interesting because I've been following him, like I said, on the radio show for several years because of Brent, right? And I've noticed a shift in his change. At a certain point, he was really expecting people to follow him and to get excited, kind of like what we did when we started talking about Fukushima with the Post-Ignorance Project. We thought we'd have millions of people going, yeah, let's stop this. Right. And no, that's not going to happen. But part of that is, in my thought process, I think that people have not taken up that moniker for several reasons, because now in the 80s we did not have the EMFs making people docile. We did not have the chemtrails seriously coming on us, causing people to be sick. When people are sick and docile and we're being affected, at an electromagnetic level into docility, frankly. That's what I think. And I think it takes a few unique characters like yourself and I who really, we're not affected. And partly, I think, is because of our rigors towards our diet. We just don't ingest a lot of stuff that other people, we may cheat here and there, but we basically don't ingest a lot of stuff that other people do that makes you prone to those electromagnetic fields. Like I think that we're the big science experiment. We're really, and so with his attitude, I think it's really about just letting people know, like, this is the reality. People are getting sick. People are dying. We are heading towards that way. And if you know about it, perhaps you can at least protect yourself. I think that's what keeps him going. Like he said, he moved to Belize, he moved far away and is living on an intentional community, kind of like Brian Porter trying to get back to the roots of living on an intentional community, right?
That's noble. I appreciate
it.
That.
It is
a noble act. Yes.
And the idea of we need to get back to our roots of just having small, sustainable communities, which goes against but we have millions of people in these large cities. Can they do small, sustainable communities? No. I've heard my teacher basically said that's not possible. But I kind of, if people inside of cities started growing their own little local backyard gardens, selling their food to people who are living in apartment tenements, if we changed up how things went, we probably could maintain a thriving city. But part of why we don't is they have created a system where we're all dependent on them.
It depends which city you're in. Toronto has a lot of backyards. There are a lot of detached single dwellings, houses that have backyards. So it may be a little more possible. But a place like New York or Mexico, where you all have high rises and large buildings, there's going to be only rooftops possibly for growing things,
Yeah.
So it might be more difficult. But what I'm thinking is, you mentioned the lines in the sky and the EM, the attacks against, there's a wonderful person, Dr. Catherine Horton, who has been exposing the attacks against her. She calls it 007. It's like she sees all these operations run out of the basements of dark government institutions that are actually targeting people, testing them, using them like guinea pigs. And I highly recommend people pay attention to what she's saying. I think she's identified.
Say her name again.
Dr. Catherine Horton, and she's on YouTube and very much worthwhile to listen to. She kind of gets a little long. She has colleagues that she talks with and directly talks about her being bombarded by these shots. They're literally like bullets hitting her that are based on electromagnetic weapons, like the HARP kind of technology that is being used against the population. She is saying, well, she's a recipient of them. She has proof, and she has great indication that we're now all potentially targets to this very nefarious bunch who have escalated their war against us, which is almost impossible to imagine when you think that the amount of radiation coming out of every nuclear plant, and especially Fukushima, the isotopes that are being created at every second, the billions and billions of isotopes that are saturating our entire environment. How could it be any worse? But, they can do direct attacks. It's insane. It's crazy. It's nuts. But here is another take I had.
Let me tell people a little bit about her. I just went to the YouTube. She says she's an ex-research fellow at St. John's College in Oxford. So she's not
amazing.
Yeah. I mean, she's an educated human being. She's not like some fly-by-night person.
She is a physicist. She worked at CERN.
Wow.
And I think she was targeted because she attended a court case in London that directly, I'm not sure the specifics of it, but obviously it was very dangerous, and she stumbled on it. She says she stumbled on it, and they picked on her, and they haven't let it go over the last 5-6 years. She's been terribly affected by.
She needs to learn EFT. EFT really shakes off a lot of things. That emotional freedom technique, it really helps you gain control.
Comment on our YouTube.
I will actually.
Go on our YouTube, comment. I think she deserves our support, and at least to listen to what's going on with her. But I was thinking about, today, it's always like I'd like to have a discussion with you that raises a sense of, that creates a sense of optimism. It's like I'm a very optimistic person. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to make the paintings that I make. There are painters out there, artists, that are extremely negative in their expression. One of them that a lot of people have come across is Marina Abramovich. She's a cooking
I find that offensive. I think she's part of the CIA. I think they planted her in our society. Well, I think she's part of this whole program to destroy our optimism and our desire to live. I find her completely, it's mental barf. That's what I call that.
It's even beyond the mental barf. It's literally destructive to our very psyches. She is inculcating us with imagery and mythologies that come like that thing I read about the cross and the sun rising. Those are phenomenon in nature, but she's actually choosing to go into that area of this mythology that deals with the dark aspect of our existence. I think there are both sides to this, and she has embraced it. And many of the contemporary artists that you see, I don't know the last time you were at a museum, but you stand in front of these creations and you scratch your head and you say, my God, this is so obviously degenerate. Why are these people being promoted in these places? Why do they have, like, last one I saw was somebody put a chicken head on a person, on a human figure with a suit. And some people say, well, it's just to express an outrage with this or that. But there is a very fine line that you cross that line and you're no longer in my realm of understanding, because you've actually embraced something that is very, very dangerous, even in the expression. I think we have to be very careful to choose our words, the words we use, the expressions we choose to represent ourselves with are very, very important. And art generally, it's like, an artist has carte blanche. I understand that there should be no limitation on what people want to express. But what I really resent tremendously is that institutions that are working on our behalf are actually embellishing and exalting this decrepit work. Why not find something that goes to the root of the nature of our being, that part in us that says, I love life, I want to live. And it's like this feeling, it's like Abramovich can do whatever the hell she wants. I don't. Go ahead.
Well, isn't that the number one agreement? Be true to your word. Like, it does matter what we say, what we act, how. That's part of the number one agreement of the 4 agreements of being true to your word. That means really being thoughtful about your words. Don't just spew out any hateful, negative thing that you come and think about, because it is destructive not only to others, but it's destructive to yourself. And part of this gets down to the root of, like I said earlier, I don't know if you were on the air, our Christmas present from this Congress was quite a tax giveaway, quite a big, FU to the common man and, setting up the oligarchy in this country. And so, we actually have to take care and be engaged, but come from a place of love. It really does matter where we act and how we behave. It matters that we choose life. That's what Christmas is about. That's the interesting thing, is the idea of Christmas and not just Christmas, but the holiday season. It's about choosing life. It's about regenerating and getting that inspiration to make it through another year, because life on this planet has never really been guaranteed. It's hard for humans.
There's ways to interpret that. For example, if you understand that this mythology is based on the rising of the sun over the equator in the northern hemisphere, one way of interpreting that is to have a celebration of life returning to us. The other way is to nail a guy on a stick, make it really bloody, like Mel Gibson in his movie. What was that movie that he was like brutalized and flagellated and burnt and crisped and baconed and stuck on the cross? This is like, why
the fact that they would even make that movie, I found it so offensive. I seriously objected to it.
Totally.
It was such a mind, it was really like just to twist our heads. It was really about letting us know that great powers can do whatever they
That's
want
right.
to you.
Reminding
That's all it was.
Exactly. That's it. That the people that stand to benefit from films like that are people that get a lot of thrill out of scaring, out of intimidating, and using the fear tactics to actually subjugate us to a certain way of living, way of seeing the world. And anything outside of that is not promoted. So if you have an artist making work that is controversial, for example, using Fukushima as a topic, as a subject, and a lot of artists are actually politically active. I mean, many artists make their work based on, if you look at the feminist movement, there were a lot of artists, women artists, male artists too, who produced work that try to counter the movement, the misogyny that was in society. So art can be used towards a political aim, or ecological art is being produced all the time. And I find it really disgusting that none of this work is being presented in museums. This work that exposes, at least let people know what some artists doing interesting, let's say, even if they're not brilliant, at least it deals with a topic that is of significance and meaning to the average person.
Yeah,
and if they're
Tom,
right?
that therein lies the difference. Significant and has meaning. When you're attempting to oppress people, you don't want most people understanding what is significant and important.
Yeah, true. I
mean, so that's kind of the bottom line is really, and this is the answer. This is where I came to terms with this, with the Post-Ignorance Project. People are not going to embrace it because it goes against everything we have been sort of brainwashed, we have been brainwashed in the Western culture to believe a whole series of falsities since World War II, starting with the fact that the military did not take over our country. I mean, when we say that traitor Trump, I would love to hear a reporter now ask him, do you still keep Hitler's speeches in your desk?
That would be a good one. Yes. Do you still have all those speeches in your wallet, in your drawer, in your, do
you have Hitler's speeches in the drawer in the White House? That would be an interesting little thing if he actually, and no doubt, and the little bird on the wall, these people on the inside this is the sad part about what's happened with him. And this is why I think they made a grave mistake putting him in, because he's too egotistical. He's spilling the beans. People surrounding him must be mortified because they expected him to have a certain level of, decorum to maintain their secrecy, because they're all participating in it. But he can't, because he is completely maniacally insane,
Lonnie, the misinformation and disinformation is so ubiquitous on every level now. We don't really know, which is why I don't think the owners care much about truth or whatever. They have
it's
such
obviously
a power.
Murder. Have you seen the movie Vaxxed?
No.
Oh, man, I would recommend this. My daughter's been telling me for like over a year, Mom, you got to watch Vaxxed. Well, while I was doing this Christmas baking over the weekend, I had it and I watched it while I was baking. The CDC in the United States, the reason that we have a skyrocketing, and I actually think they did this intentionally to cover up all the nuclear-caused autism, because autism, one of the first things that we see when people are exposed to radioactivity is autism. In the 1940s, the CDC did this study where they and again in the 80s, they revisited the vaccines. They came out with a vaccine now in the United States where they require babies to get 3 vaccines at one time. You can't separate them. Merck created a vaccine, put them on. My children got the same vaccines, but they were 3 separate shots. And one, they gave 2 on one day and 1 the next week, which is a healthier, if you're going to give vaccines, that was kind of like the norm. It doesn't cause severe problems. We have seen autism in this country skyrocket because Merck developed a vaccine that puts 3 in 1, and then they now give them children up to 52 vaccines before they are
16. Yeah, by the time they're 16, almost 60.
13 in the first year. But brutal. The rates of autism for children now, especially boys, before the age of 3, if you get these vaccines, and the whistleblower in Vax said he is asking Congress to talk to him, to depose him, and Congress will not do it.
Yeah, please, people, listen to this. People, you have to listen to this. This is so important. The vaccine issue is an outrage against all innocent life. Children, innocent.
They're attacking. They know that it causes autism. And at this rate, this is what they were saying. If they don't stop this at this rate, 2/3 of the American male population will have autism in 30 years.
Okay, let's go into the positive part of it, which is I'd like to bring something up. And that is a solution that I feel we can always we can bring it up. Whether or not people embrace it or not is another issue. But you've probably been aware of this. The bubbleheads out there are promoting what is called a Bitcoin. Have you heard of that?
Oh, yeah.
And Bitcoin has been getting publicity because it has skyrocketed from zero to, I think it went up to $19,000 or $20,000, right? And it's a digital currency. They call them crypto. Crypto is an interesting name because crypto means hidden. And I'm not too pleased about the hidden world. I like the hidden world to be exposed, but they're creating a currency that is based on hidden. Anyway, there has been a lot of discussion as well lately, especially this fellow called Quinn Michaels has been doing videos on what he calls artificial intelligence, literally taking over all of our lives. And I think this is very interesting to me, outside of Fukushima and the physical destruction. I think the AI is actually a platform to digitize everything on Earth, meaning animate and inanimate, meaning you, me, product, assets, houses, buildings, rocks, minerals, gold.
Assets on a balance sheet, baby.
Exactly. You've said this, that we are assets. Now, this is now turning into the next level of depravity from the point of view that it's being promoted as AI. And kids especially are supposedly, well, they're the ones that are going to adopt this because crystallized crotchety old farts like myself that's the last thing we're gonna embrace, a digital currency or a digital format at our own peril, they say. Well, quite frankly, I think this is where our resistance needs to become quite motivated. And it's obviously whenever I say something about I feel threatened by, there's always the jewel in the crown. I want people to understand that this nuclear monster breathing down our neck is always there. This is just on top of that, right? So, but I've said this plenty, and you've said it plenty. So I'm going to transition a little toward this real danger that I feel we're in, and that is what is called AI. And films have been made about this. If you look at the Schwarzenegger movies,
the Terminator movies.
Yeah.
There actually was a movie with AI with Will Smith where the one AI was actually had a human consciousness.
The drone, right? Yeah.
That was an interesting. But you know what's interesting about that is the people that are creating and manipulating this civilization, they tell us what they're going to do through movies. The movies are an indication of what they're telling us.
Do you think that that's their strategy?
Quite. And then because I forget the name of the curve, but in social sciences, there's a curve that says if you want to manipulate, this is how Trader Trump has actually made what he does normal. What happens is if you want to take a super extreme position, you can't just go from the middle of the road to the extreme. So you take a halfway position, and then that becomes the norm so that you shift the extreme. So you start doing things that are so outrageous that people naturally pull back not towards the center of a line. Like if there's a line A to B, the middle ground is kind of the average of where we're at. If you want to move people to a super outrageous position like Hitler did, where everybody felt okay about killing Jews, you say that outrageously, and then there are some people that will gravitate towards you, but it's so extreme that it creates such a shock that people pull back from that extreme, but they don't go back to the middle of A and B. They go towards the middle of the extreme and the center. So that by the time it's a kind of a way to brainwash people.
Well, it's like the boiling frog idea, right? Like you do the frog, if you put him in boiling water, he jumps out. But if you boil the water slowly, the frog will just die.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. And I think the AI, now the AI, I know, I'm not sure how familiar you are with how extensive this is now. Everyone has a tablet. Even in Africa, kids are given for free almost Microsoft computer stuff and tablets and phones, and you can be in the Somali desert and get a phone call, right? So there is this amazing development where something that is so advanced in what we call the developed world is now already part of the developing world, that you could be living in the slums of Calcutta, but you have a phone, right? So this idea of AI is now actually becoming part of everybody's life. And I'm not sure to what extent the lines in the sky and the aluminum and the chipping and all that has already occurred. I don't feel the effect personally yet. I don't have that sort of sense. I don't know if we would know it. But my suspicion is that by digitizing everything, we no longer have autonomy, literally. Like we could, even if we're in the camps, people were still making poetry and making music and attempting. You know, Kate Kolowitz is a very well-known artist who experienced the camps and did her paintings and drawings. She did charcoal work, magnificent work. And an ex-teacher of mine was a survivor of the camps as well. And he made drawings and survived through that spirit that they conjure. I don't know how people do that. I don't think I'd make it. But there's some extraordinary souls that were able to counter the influences that were coming at them and overcoming. But I have a feeling that AI, this concept, artificial intelligence, will create an artificial reality. And that is that'll be the last nail in our coffin, because then we're completely manipulated and controlled. And I quite frankly think we're getting very close, because people like, especially somebody like, I'm going to mention a name, Cliff High. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Yeah, I do know Cliff. I can't follow Cliff, actually.
No. Cliff is a spiritual grease monkey. He's like all over the place with his prognostications. And what he is doing is basically setting up what is called systemic feedback. He's using data and AI to make people comfortable with the future. Whenever you hear him prognosticate, it's all about wishful thinking. A lot of his stuff doesn't work. But what he's managed to do is create a platform for people to accept something because it's inevitable. It's the future. Everybody wants it. So this is in science. It's called.
Well, that's the Overton. This is in fact, that's what it's called. It's called the Overton window. This idea of this shifting window from right to left to really far extremes, right? So that's called the Overton window. That's exactly what he's.
Okay, Overton window means, like you're saying, that we're being acclimatized to a major change, right?
Yeah, and we're being climatized to accept something that heretofore would be considered unthinkable.
Okay.
And that's exactly how that works. And, honestly, I don't think we really have a choice, because we are on this trajectory. And unless the planet really has a major revulsion, which it might. We had earthquakes up in the North Pole this weekend, so who knows what's really going to, I have faith that Gaia is going to overturn the tables, so to speak.
We need to have that. We need to have that faith. We got to have some hope that there is actually a groundswell, what I call, how I'm about conscience, that there is every person has an aspect to themselves that they know when they're doing something wrong. And even if they don't know exactly how to make it right, we still know that we've done something wrong, and we can proceed towards the right side of things rather than continue on the wrong. With all the explanations and all the paychecks that take care of our conscience, we can actually begin to move towards doing the right more than doing the wrong. And I think if that happens, hope will increase substantially. But just to finish off on this idea of systemic feedback, that this AI is being brought in under our noses in all the different social media, the Twitter. Trump is a big Twitter guy, the Facebook stuff, which is all funded by a person called Peter Thiel. Like, they have their inside these favorite individuals like Elon Musk, who represents the future to go to Mars. What a charlatan. This guy is supposedly running 5 major companies, plus a space program, which is a bunch of hooey, and we're thinking that this guy is actually doing this. Do you know what it takes to run a major company? Can you imagine, Lonnie, you get up in the morning and you're running like BMW Canada or BMW whatever, and then you have like you do SpaceX, and you do electric cars, and you do whatever major billion-dollar company. One person can't do that, but they propagate these types as being the idols to the youth. Like everyone that's 20 or younger says, I want to be like this Elon Musk guy, who's basically a village idiot. I think they found him in a bowling alley somewhere and put him up in front of us. And anyway, what I'm thinking, Lonnie, is that this threat that I feel we can counter with our inner self, when we see and observe and interact, we know how to do the right thing. You know it, and I know it. And even if we do the wrong thing and we can't fix it right away, at least we're going to try to fix it and make it better. I think that's our only chance. There is no pronouncement I can make from what my humble studio, what I understand about myself, other than I know how to fix myself. I know how to do something in my life that makes me feel better about myself. And I think this is something that's lacking for a lot of people, because they start to feel worse and worse and worse about themselves. And right around this time, this is a major time where people sort of had it. The suicide rate is huge over Christmas. And I think it's because people feel really bad about themselves because they know they've been doing the wrong thing or they've been hurt. And
what happens is they get overwhelmed. I think that people, do this because it feels like no matter what they do, it gets worse at Christmas, because that's why people hate Christmas, because no matter what you do, we're still not able to bring home the Mercedes-Benz with the bow on the car like we're being told we should. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter how in debt you go, the struggle to feel like you're doing the right thing to your children and giving them a good holiday. It's like, it's all such fake and self-hating stuff. And it's the same thing like what you're talking about with Elon Musk. Like, who is this character? What a name. But again, he's been pivoted to the forefront by the oligarchs who are manipulating people. And so it's really, this is about doing the right thing. Talk about doing the right thing. It's about shaking off the brainwashing and going, you know what? I'm going to love myself no matter what. I am going to value myself no matter what I look like, no matter what no matter what they tell me how inadequate I am. I know I have value. I know that I matter. And we do matter. We matter to the people in our direct lives. That's why suicide hurts. It matters. And we have to remind ourselves that we are genuinely beautiful, magnificent creatures. Every single creature on this planet has a right to live. And guess what, Tom? We're at 8:58 and 9 seconds. Yes.
Oh, I should have been here on time. Oh.
That's all right. I appreciate you coming on with us. And happy Christmas, everybody. I like Christmas. I love the holidays just because I like the getting together with the family. Like, our family does it really sweet. It's not about Christmas presents and all that stuff. We just love being able to get together. And I think
me too. I'm going to see all my nieces. My nieces and the little ones, they're going to come over for lots of food.
That's the fun thing about it. So
I'm going to hug them all. Hug them all.
Well, put your courage feet on. Have some fun. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Tom, thank you for joining us. You guys have a happy Christmas and enjoy the day. Don't let the mind get to you. Just have fun. We'll talk to you guys later.
Thanks, Lonnie.
Bye, Tom.
Bye.